Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, man, how's it going?
Tony, I just was doing my normal Monday night thing. Just went, coached hockey practice, got off the ice, and Brian Kelly is now the coach of LSU for some reason. And Josh Gattis has thoughts on Ohio State, and now there's maybe Virginia Tech's about to make a horrendous mistake. I mean, this is the kind of night it was like, well, I wasn't planning. Like I had my morning scoop already done for tomorrow. It was like it posted, and then like 5 minutes after it posted, it's like, oh, the world blew up. Cool. Well, it's already outdated. That's fantastic.
Well, and that's the thing. I'm sitting here, and all of this is I'm trying to watch Narcos Mexico season 3, and I had to pause it when I think it was even before the Brian Kelly stuff started. I don't know. I don't think it was the Lincoln Riley. I think that stuff had already started, but just it has been an absolutely crazy day, and we were planning to record something tomorrow morning, but it's at this point, I was thinking, Tom, like an hour ago, we could probably do a daily college football show at this rate. Just if it's going to be like this all year, because
Hmm.
it's already this, but I guess it's already this during championship week. So will it be over by like the national championship game? Will everybody be in their places by the end of the college football season? I think that's a bit hasty, but this has all been hasty. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is completely crazy. I was not prepared for a bunch of this. Like, I mean, the Lincoln Riley. Like, it felt like you heard these names in conjunction with other jobs. Lincoln Riley was linked to LSU for long enough that he came out and specifically denied being interested in the LSU job. Like he said, I'm not going to LSU, and then went to USC. Brian Kelly, meanwhile, like a week or two ago, was specifically not even 2 weeks ago, was specifically into the USC job, and came out and said something about, unless my fairy godmother shows up with $250 million, I'm not leaving Notre Dame. And then he didn't go to USC. He went to LSU. It's like what is going on? And Brian Kelly's fairy godmother apparently only brought $100 million, which is still not bad, but not the cool quarter billion he was holding out for earlier.
It is you're seeing these big long term contracts, these 10-year extensions, which it used to be like 4 or 6 years, and now it's like no, we're going to go to 10. I guess the first people to do it would have been Notre Dame back in 2005 with Charlie Weiss when they signed him to like a 10-year, $50 million extension that they stopped paying for a few years back because they were finally done with it. But I don't know if 10 years is like, okay, you start there and then you go up. But you look at the Lincoln Riley deal at USC is from the reports. I mean, it is spectacular. It's 10 or 11 years. They're buying both of his houses in Oklahoma. They are, or wherever his second house is. They're buying him a $6 million house in the USC vicinity. Only certain vicinities, I'm guessing. They probably can't,
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. There's like possibly unlimited use of private plane. I can completely understand why he left Oklahoma for that job and all of that. And he, you are the big man on campus and a big fish in a smallish pond in the Big 12. You're about to go into a pond with some more piranhas and sharks, or you could just go out west and you have security, you have time, you have a recruiting base that I guess his recruiting base has been Texas, and now he's going to have another Texas. He'll just have his California, where there are not as many. If we're going to keep with the fishing thing, it's not as many fishermen in California as there are in Texas. Like Ohio State only goes out there for certain things, but Ohio State will go to Texas like constantly, like, and that's like a lot of schools east of the Mississippi where they're not all going to go out there. And now this makes complete sense for, I think, for USC and for him. And so we'll see how it goes. But I would expect this to work. I mean, what does work mean at USC though?
Well, it's going to be a lot better. I think that's safe to say because they're actually going to be trying in recruiting, and they're not going to have a coach who has been on the hot seat for the last 5 years. So that's immediately going to be better. And he's someone with some cachet. Clay Helton, like, if you took all the USC stuff off of Clay Helton and just had him like just wearing a button-down shirt and khakis, how confident are you? I mean, you and I have been in a press conference room with Clay Helton. How confident are you that you could pick Clay Helton out of a pack of 40 just regular, just 50-something white dudes? Like, I mean, are you 100% confident? Because, like, I could pick Brian Kelly out of a pack of 50 guys. I could pick Urban Meyer out of a pack of 50 guys. How confident are you could pick Clay Helton out
You
of a
know,
pack of 50 guys?
I would say, and maybe this is something we could actually do. You would have to put it together and throw it up on the board. And I know we are without Kevin Noon right now. He may get back into things here tonight, but I know that's what we should, because he just texted. He's like, hey, I'll be home in like 10 minutes. We should tell him, put together a board of a lineup of just
You,
average dudes, throw Clay Helton in there, and
mm-hmm,
let's see if Tony can pick him out. I would say yes at a 70%. I have a 70% confidence
mm-hmm,
that I can do that. Um, but also, I know that if you were to grab similar people, like if you
mm-hmm,
do like a
mm-hmm.
Google image search or something, and you just do like similar people, that would be, for one, that would be tricky. For two, that would be mean. But I, I, I'm, I think I would probably get him. But if I walked by him at Kroger, no idea. Like, would
No,
not stand out at all.
no, and he was a guy who had like one of the premier jobs in college football for a long time and was just wholly unremarkable in so many ways, other than the fact that he just sort of remained in that job. That was the most remarkable thing about Clay Helton. And you're going from that, a guy who's just like wallpaper and just perpetually job in turmoil wallpaper, to Lincoln Riley, who is young, energetic, renowned as this great offensive mind, renowned as this guy who just wins conferences year after year after year. And, yes, he has had a ceiling at Oklahoma, unquestionably, but he's also a guy who, if you're an offensive player, he has an identity. The identity is guy whose offense keeps putting its quarterbacks in the Heisman finalists, or winning the Heisman or getting drafted first overall and putting up crazy numbers every year and winning the Big 12 every year. Like, that's an identity. Clay Helton's identity was guy who was kind of perpetually in danger of being fired. That was his identity. So you've got, what is California known for? You talked about what Ohio State goes out to California for. And, like, yes, they went out there for Wyatt Davis, but by and large, what are they going out there for? Quarterbacks, wide receivers. Like, that's California is like you get your 6'6" pro style quarterback from California, and he throws the ball 40 yards 40 yards down the field, pinpoint accuracy. Like, that's what you get out of California. So that's what he has there now. And this is not a new recruiting area for Clay Helton, for Lincoln Riley either. Like, he's been recruiting California a little bit already. So that one makes sense to me. The Brian Kelly one, though, does the Brian Kelly one make any sense to you? Like, I mean, I get it. Like, you have a higher ceiling at LSU, and they're going to pay you a crap load of money. What about Brian Kelly going down to Louisiana? That sounds like a sitcom. That doesn't sound like a coaching hire. That's like, oh boy, the fish out of water sitcom. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
oh boy, I got reassigned, and he's someone who has had every single person in his football office has been speaking the Queen's English to him for the last 10 years, and now he's going to be listening to Bayou gobbledygook, and it's like he's going to need a translator. Like, why is this going to work?
To me, this has to be almost as much about Notre Dame for him as it is LSU. This is, to me, I just want to get away from Notre Dame, or it's time for a change, or he's tired of dealing with the academics, Tom, because at LSU, I don't. He doesn't have to worry about that anymore. Even though I do believe it is overblown at Notre Dame, it's certainly not underblown at LSU, there'll be no worries there. But it is weird. He's not anybody that I would picture there. Although, as I tweeted out a couple weeks ago, he is the school colors. I mean, he is purple, so there is that. But it's strange. That's why for me, it's as much about getting away from Notre Dame, and then because his name always pops up, and you figure it's for the Rays. I mean, there was shoot. I wrote something back in 2013 because I was looking today. I was like, have I ever said anything about Brian Kelly to LSU other than like 2 weeks ago when I was teasing our buddy Ryan Ginn, who is a LSU fan, used to be on the Ohio State beat. That have fun with Brian Kelly as LSU's new coach in a couple of weeks. But I was looking to see if there's anything more prophetic. But I had a tweet back in 2013 where I wrote about the people who are going to like 5 candidates to replace Brian Kelly because he was looking for he was mentioned for another job, and there was a couple few years ago it was the NFL, and there's always like his current deal gets a little old after a couple of years. They need to spice it up or something like that, and that's what I figured this was because that just doesn't fit. I could see going to Oklahoma before going to LSU, and I don't think the Oklahoma thing was all that. So it's a little surprising. I feel like he's a better coach than Les Miles. He's a better coach than Ed Orgeron. I mean, he's made the playoffs at Notre Dame. I don't think he's the recruiter that he may be. I mean, he's got some guys, but a lot of that roster is littered with just 3-star guys, and that's another interesting thing about Lincoln Riley. He's bringing 5-star Florida kids to Oklahoma. Like, how can he get those same kids to go all the way to California? I don't know, but if he can get 5-star kids to go to Oklahoma, I'm sure he can do it to go to USC. But with Brian Kelly recruiting, it's certainly going to be easier. So there is that. It'd be interesting to see what his staff is, and then Tom, what happens to Notre Dame?
Yeah, and that kind of is the interesting question there. And I mean, I feel like there's a very clean, obvious chain of movements here, which would be Luke Fickell goes from Cincinnati to Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman goes from Notre Dame defensive coordinator to new head coach at UC at Cincinnati. That feels like that's sort of inevitable. I know there's Matt Campbell's name has come up with regard to Notre Dame as well. That's obviously a possibility. I'd be interested in getting Bill Green's thoughts on that because I know Bill Green has pretty good insight with as it goes to with Matt Campbell. But yeah, that to me, Fickell to Notre Dame, and I mean he's proven he can win at Notre Dame. He did it earlier this year, right? So and he's got his team in the playoff. Then you get into the okay, let's say it is Luke Fickell. Let's say he agrees to coach Notre Dame 3 days from now. The college football playoff happens. Notre Dame and Cincinnati could theoretically both be in the college football playoff. Who does Luke Fickell coach in the college football playoff? Would Cincinnati allow him to continue to coach if in the college football playoff? I would think that they would.
I think
probably. So. But because this is one of those like I don't think anyone at Cincinnati could go. Well, how could you dare leave us for lowly Notre Dame? I mean, like I think. As much as they want to, preen and tell you that they're one of the 5 best programs in the country, it's like, well, you're ranked in the top 5 right now, yes. So by that metric, yes, but also by literally any other metric, no. So,
but wouldn't it be better for him? The thought is like, well, it's better for him if Notre Dame wins. He goes on to win a national title. I'm going to say it's probably better for Notre Dame to lose to Cincinnati right then so that they don't get killed by Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Like if this is a first round matchup, like go ahead and beat them now. That's good for Luke Fickell. And you won't I don't think you have to worry about his loyalties, like where it would be better for him if Notre Dame wins that game and maybe wins a national title. I just don't think that second part is going to happen, and it might actually do more harm than good. So maybe just go ahead and end Notre Dame's season right then. But it's as I wrote on on Sunday or whatever, this was not the right year for Ohio State to have a flub
Mm-hmm.
before the playoffs, because this thing is a wild, wild mess.
Mm-hmm. No, it is, and this is the year that, like, it seems like everything's falling into place for Georgia to win the national championship, because Georgia fans are convinced that they're cursed, and you look at the last 40 years, and it's like, well, they may have a point there. I mean, maybe. Um, there's a Kevin Noon trying to join. Let's no.
No, turn out the lights. Turn out the lights.
Yeah,
We're not
yeah.
here.
We're pretend we're not home. Let's see. He's in the green room now. Let's see if we can add him. I'm gonna put him on the right. There we go. How about that? Look, hey.
I
I
don't
have
see
good
him.
news, Kevin. I have good news. You're in the show. I have bad news. I know how to produce this now, so you're fired. So I mean, it's a good news, bad news day.
All right. Well, I'll just take my things and see ya.
But I don't see him. I just see you, Tom. Just an FYI. I don't see three of us.
Oh, really?
So maybe that's on me.
That's because
Who
Tom
knows?
doesn't know how to do all the settings for us to see return on this. He just has us set up on basic. So I'm safe. I just see his New York Mets Max Scherzer special, whatever.
Well, here's my question: is this just going to be on Tom the entire time? Is anybody seeing any of us? Is this all just Tom?
That's a good question. No, there we go. Yeah, I see it. Yeah, it was unmuted, but yes, I see everyone. Good, we're doing it. Everything's great. Everything's perfect.
Okay, I do see us. There we go.
As long as no one asks any questions, everything is perfect. So, anyway, as we were saying, yeah, I think I think Fickle to Notre Dame makes a lot of sense. I think Freeman to Cincinnati makes a lot of sense. I mean, I know a lot of people have been asking about Freeman to Ohio State as a potential defensive coordinator candidate. He has been, he is the head coach in waiting somewhere. And I don't think he's going to turn down an opportunity to be the head coach of a team that is, one way or the other, ranked in the top 5 right now. If that is an opportunity that's available to him, I think he's going to take that. And, if somehow Matt Campbell ends up at Notre Dame, maybe if Notre Dame hires Matt Campbell, maybe then he says, nuts to this, and Mama calls and Mama writes him a big enough check that he's willing to come back to Columbus. But he's not passing up a head coaching job for the opportunity to be a defensive coordinator at Ohio State.
So, Kevin, we have gone over the Lincoln Riley to Oklahoma, Brian Kelly to LSU, and just discussing the possibilities of who will replace Brian Kelly. Your overall thoughts on the day? Anything stand out to you on a crazy day?
I love NASCAR, and I love the NASCAR silly season, and this puts it all to shame because this is insane what we're going through. I never thought that. I mean, I heard last year going into this season, Brian Kelly was kind of leveraging some things. Maybe I'm not going to be at Notre Dame forever, yada, yada, yada. Maybe it was just a ploy to try and get more money or get some easier admissions for athletes. And lo and behold, he moves. I mean, obviously the whole Lincoln Riley situation is crazy. I think that people are overpaying right now. I think that's the biggest thing that I have right now, and that's going to drive the cost to be competitive up out of the stratosphere. But I heard bits and pieces as I was signing on, and yeah, I think that Luke Fickell to Notre Dame makes sense. I think that Marcus Freeman to Cincinnati makes a lot of sense. Where does Matt Campbell fit in all this? I think that's the question. What is the Matt Campbell situation? Because Matt Campbell was at Toledo, Ohio State, Michigan, and Notre Dame were reported to be the 3 schools that he always had outs with. Does he come into the situation? There's a guy in the NFL right now. You may have heard of him. His name is Urban Meyer. He always coveted the Notre Dame position. I know that Shelley Meyer had no interest in living in South Bend. But what happens if that gets thrown into this mix? I mean, there's so many. It's fascinating. It is really fascinating. And honestly, if I said Nick Saban to Vanderbilt, based on everything we've heard in the last 36 hours, would you think that was insane? I mean, that's not going to happen, but I mean, come on.
There's the oldest saying in coaching: you don't want to be the guy who follows Clark Lee. Nick Saban is not going to make that mistake. We did get a super chat from Jordan Kapler. We did get a super chat from Jordan Kapler. College football is like a box of chocolates. You never know what head coach you're going to get. And I mean, where did Forrest Gump go to college?
Alabama.
There you go. The one thing that I think is the funniest with Brian Kelly going down to LSU is the thought of him continuing his, this isn't a 4-year decision, this is a 40-year decision sales pitch. Listen, when you have that LSU diploma on the wall, son, you're going to go places. That nothing opens doors like a Louisiana State University education. I want to be a fly on the wall the first time he does that, because, man, it's going to go great.
Yeah, you're going to go places. You're going to go to Louisiana Monroe to finish up that second degree. People are saying, a couple of people saying they cannot hear Kevin.
I mean, Larry says he can't, but I wonder, I mean, and the hearing aid guy, of course, said put your hearing aid in, Larry. But hearing aid guy obviously has the hearing aids. So if people can't hear me, if people are saying they can't hear me, let me know in the chat, and I'll change microphones. But otherwise, I'm going to keep going with this.
Yeah. Excuse me. So yes, this entire hot stove, like I've said before, that's it's one of my favorite parts of the season. But it's supposed to be after the season, like at least after. I guess they did technically wait until the end of the regular season, but this is, I guess it's kind of overshadowing championship week. Not that it's the greatest championship week we've ever seen, so I guess maybe this is a good thing to give us a distraction. But I don't know what else is there. Because once one guy leaves, there's this domino where somebody's going to leave to fill that. To have this many big jobs open and more to possibly come, where there's going to be a lot of forever homes where it's not a stepping stone job for guys. If they want, they're going to be available. And that's always, I wonder if this will be the most ever, like in a season. Because usually, 2 or 3 or whatever. This, I mean, there could be 10 or something. I did see a super chat here from Jordan Kapler. Roll Tide. What? Go Irish.
That's
Irish.
That's almost what Ed Orgeron said the other year.
Yeah, yes. Another super chat here from Gavin Whiteacre. So what will this mean for the game the Buckeyes play against Notre Dame next year, assuming a guy like Urban or Fickle go there? That's one of the things I tweeted out. Like, imagine Urban Meyer's first game as Notre Dame's head coach takes place in Ohio Stadium. I don't think he's coming back to college. He's already turned Notre Dame down twice before. Yeah, dream job, but I don't know if that's what he wants to do. It's a lot of work. Luke Fickle, Matt Campbell. I think it depends on which guy Notre Dame wants, because I think they can get either. Mm-hmm. And then that will impact if Matt Campbell goes and Luke Fickle stays, and that Cincinnati job doesn't open up, I think Ohio State calls Marcus Freeman again and is like, what do you want? Let's get it done. We will work with you. And then everybody's happy. And I think that's the thing that makes the most sense. So I guess, Tom, ain't no way that's happening.
Yeah, somehow Marcus Freeman's going to end up the coach of either the Saskatchewan Roughriders or the
Oklahoma Sooners.
Yeah, New Jersey Generals or the Oklahoma Sooners, or it's based on the way things are going. Yes, it's going to be. It's anything that seems like, oh, this makes sense. Like, nope, that's not how it's going to go. I mean, I think I saw there were 20 head coaches out of jobs already this year, and we're like just getting into firing season now. I mean, there were a ton of people who were out of jobs in the middle of the season, which is like an abnormally high number of people out of jobs in the middle of the season, to the point that this may have gone under the radar for a lot of people. We talked about Clay Helton earlier in the show. Did you know that Clay Helton has another job already?
Yeah,
he's now the head coach at Georgia Southern. Like, and that
was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I think we talked about that in a show.
Ancient history. I mean, hell, Rich Rod has a new job. Rich Rod's going to be a head coach again. Where is he? Like at Jacksonville State or something like that? That's going to go Division I by 2023. So, Lord, I mean, it just if you can't get a head coaching job now, I mean, Tom, you should probably throw your hat in the ring. You know those advanced metrics. I mean, you're more qualified than a lot of these other turkeys.
Tom is a hockey coach. Tell him what happened couple days ago.
We talked about this on the show yesterday, didn't we? Didn't
No,
we talk
off
about
the air.
Oh, okay. Well, we had our first hockey tournament of the year, our select team, and 4-0-1 start. The tie was our greatest victory, one of the greatest victories in program history, and so yeah, so it's basically 5-0. This is a super chat from King Bronco. BK ain't even won in a real cave, much less with LSU, where he went shrieking at cabbages. Going to lose 20 games a year up the noodles for a moose horde. Yeah, totally.
Thank you, King Bronco.
If you send us a super chat, we have to read it. That's the law. Otherwise,
you have to read it.
Well, let's not. We can be bought, but there are some things that we won't put up there.
This one, I think, from Alabama fan Roll Tide is Noon's burner account. Kevin Noon is a genuine cool dude. Ohio State will bounce back next season. Look, Kevin, just because you didn't start the show here, you don't have to take it out on us with these fake comments talking about how awesome and cool you are. That's it's pretty sad.
It is really sad, but I'm just a sad shell of a man, so that's all I got.
So we have not we've touched on a couple of the coaching news pieces of coaching news, but there's some interesting news from Michigan as well, where Michigan has won a football game, and now Josh Gattis has some thoughts. Here's Josh Gattis's quote. He spoke to John Jansen on his podcast. It's the same podcast that Cade McNamara was talking on last week when he gave his slightly incendiary quote that turned out to be fairly accurate. The quote, "It was huge, started fast in setting the tone for the game and really creating the identity of the game that we were going to dominate on both fronts, not just on offensive line, but defensive line as well. Just being able to smash them however we could and really set the tone. They're a good team. They're a good team. They're a finesse team. They're not a tough team. And we knew that going into the game that we can out-physical them, we can out-tough, and that was going to be the key to the game, and that's what we prepared for all year long. You saw earlier this year in the game they lost to Oregon. Oregon was the most physical team on the field. That's the way they lost, and we committed to that recipe, and it paid off." Now, I posted this quote, and I basically posted, "Boy, this is going to be a fun next year." And I had a bunch of people replying to me with, "Well, why? Because that's true." It's like, well, okay. Yes, that was true. That has no bearing on whether that's going to make the next year more interesting or not. I mean, I think Ohio State has figured out what the issue was on Saturday. We all figured it out as we were watching the game. Like, yeah, they're getting their butts whipped in the trenches. Now Ohio State has 361 more days to sort that out. And Ohio State has some pretty good, raw material to work with. And I have a feeling that Mickey Marotti is going to be looking at everything from top to bottom, and Ryan Day is going to be looking at everything from top to bottom. And sometimes Ohio State loses sometimes when they get complacent. And you heard the Jim Harbaugh quote about people being born on third, and maybe it was a little bit perceived as a little bit too much of a birthright that, well, if you come to Ohio State, of course you'll beat Michigan. That's what always happens. Well, now it hasn't, and now Michigan keeps they keep talking, and sometimes that doesn't go great because you saw what I mean. We have recently seen the last time Ohio State lost to a team and then played them the following year. They lost a very close game to Clemson, and Clemson was, pretty gracious after that game. But that was, just that loss itself, and the way that kind of ended the season was really a motivating thing. And that was what Ohio State spent the whole next year with murder in their hearts. And they played Clemson in the Sugar Bowl, and Clemson just got destroyed. And boy, I don't know that I would be poking this particular bear. I think I would feel very good about my win. I think I would feel very excited about the opportunity to come go play at Iowa and win a Big Ten championship, maybe make the college football playoff. I don't know that you need to give Ohio State any more motivation because Ohio State does still have good football players. That is a thing that they have, and they're going to have a lot of those football players back, and Michigan's going to lose a lot of their good football players next year. And it's like, if that trip to Columbus was going to go not very well for Michigan, like this is how that year would start. And he's not wrong. I'm not saying he's wrong, but I don't know if you need to say those words out loud.
Kevin, go ahead if you want if you want to say something.
Yeah, I've changed mics so because I still see people complaining about my audio, so hopefully this is better. But yeah, say less. I mean, say less. Take the win. You were better on Saturday. You won the game. There is a certain level of spoils that goes to the victor, but those spoils are spicy shrimp cocktail at St. Elmo, playing another game in Indianapolis, and a chance to go to the college football playoff. By popping off like this, you're just creating some more ammunition for Ohio State. And I've said it time and I'll say it again, time and time again. If you need bulletin board material to get up for this game, then you probably have already lost. But why give the other team more fuel for the fire? So it just really kind of seems foolish. It seems misplaced to do that. Now, if you need to do that to get your troops up, all right, I hear you. Go for it. Harbaugh's popped off. Gattis has popped off. I'm sure that somebody else is going to pop off because that seems to be the MO up there right now. But, I don't know. And I saw in the chat people talking about the story, whether or not Ryan Day talked about hang 100. And that, for that story, that was in 2020. And if we're being truthful, if they would have played in 2020 based on where the rosters were, Ohio State probably would have hung 100 on them because Michigan was down to a quarterback that I'd never heard of before, and I tend to follow this stuff closely. They were down a lot of guys, so there was a serious mess going on there. But I don't know. I just think that you've won one since 2011. It just seems to be a lot of crowing at this point, and it just seems to be, I don't know, out of place. But peak Harbaugh is S-talking Harbaugh. So, if that's what it gets, I like Twitter. I like reading some S-talking. Go for it, I guess.
Jim Harbaugh already has said, the stuff that Ohio State was saying fueled them. And now they are, doing the same thing for Ohio State. And it doesn't matter if it's true. David Boston, when he guaranteed a victory or whatever, said something to the effect of, if we play to our abilities, we will win. But that, yes, that was true. If they would have won. But they didn't. And so you see the result. But it just because it's true doesn't mean it's not going to be used. And this was very, very similar to Jim Harbaugh. You win one game, and you're talking like you've won 3 in a row. Josh Gattis, they win one game, and they're talking like they've won 10 in a row. It's Ohio State doesn't even talk like that after winning 10 in a row, or 8 in a row, or 4 in a row, or 3 in a row, or whatever. It's surprising for sure, and it won't be forgotten. And as Tom has mentioned on the show about up on the walls in the Woody, it's beating Alabama and it's beating Clemson. This is going to be all over the walls, all over, wherever in the meeting rooms and wherever they can put them. It's something that will be used. I don't think, but you also have to be careful with it so that it just doesn't become like background noise, or how you can get accustomed to a pain and it goes away. You can't have it be like that, but it does Michigan no good. It does the rivalry good. Everybody enjoys it on the outside like this, and it's go ahead if you want to talk. More power to you, but just understand what the byproducts can be, and then of course, then it's just up to Ohio State to do it. And if they can't do it next year, just imagine what Michigan's going to be saying at that point.
Yeah, and I think there's an important distinction to draw here. This is not oh, I'm upset that Josh Gattis is saying this. No, I mean, I am my editorial position on this in literally every case in all across college football is talk that mess, man. Talk it. Tweet the extremely crappy thing at your opponent after you beat them. Minnesota, play jump around after you beat Wisconsin. Do it. Play. Absolutely drag LSU around the field and then play neck at the end of the game. Take whatever they love and absolutely rub their face in it. Absolutely. This just doesn't seem particularly advised to do it in this particular way. It's not how dare he? It's just I don't think that's going to end well. that's where I just want to make sure there's a distinction there. It's not like, I assure you, you are not going to hear the word classless out of any of the three of us. Like, it's like, that is not what this is about at all. Like, if you want to talk, like, go ahead and talk, but just, it feels like this is something that we're going to be talking about before the game next year. And then you'll hear Ohio State people talking about after the game next year as well. Like, you don't necessarily, there's a way to do it and kind of drag someone and not necessarily provide them bulletin board material. That it just feels like I kind of see how this story is going to end already.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kevin, if you want.
I was going to say, it's going to end with C.J. Stroud throwing for about 6 touchdowns and Trevion Henderson rushing for about 3 in Columbus in November of 2022, because they're going to come out, and I guarantee you're not going to see the same soft baby pudding line situation that we saw in the game in 2021. I mean, I'm all for, you know what? Score that extra touchdown. I don't care. If your feelings are hurt, do better. Do better. But Ohio State's going to do better, and they're going to do a lot better. And I think that it's going to be at Michigan's expense. And I just don't think that it's a smart decision. But you do you. If that's what you want to do, if that's how you want to play it, do it. But I mean, I think it's a mistake. I really think it's a mistake. I mean, Ohio State doesn't come out after beating Penn State, quote unquote, not our rival, doesn't come out after that and talk about, how Penn State blew double-digit leads in the fourth quarter in back-to-back years and so on and so forth. I don't know. I mean, Alabama doesn't come out and, crap talk LSU or Ole Miss or anybody like that. I mean, it just feels very nouveau riche. It's a very nouveau riche way of doing things, and whatever. It adds hate to the rivalry, and embrace the hate.
This comment from MPWMU: you're only complaining about the trash talk because it's true, and you're not used to being the other. Just take it. Again, we are not the ones being trash talked. So that's one thing. The other thing is we've just been saying that it's true, but that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't matter to Ohio State if it's true. And yeah, how dare they call me soft? No, they're not talking to me, so it doesn't bother me. But we're having a conversation here and saying, hey, is this smart to say this, or is this dumb to say this, whether it's true or not? And that's what we're talking about. I was sad when Brett Bielema left because he talked a lot of trash, and when he came back, I was happy, but now he seems to be like, newer, nicer, calmed down Brett Bielema, which is unfortunate. They need to maybe win some more, and then I don't know that you can really talk trash at Illinois though. So that's probably never going to happen again, but I like this upbeat Jim Harbaugh. The coaches that are with him now, young and brash, and I saw Josh Gattis was up like one of the 5 finalists for the Broyles Assistant Coach of the Year award, which is interesting. I guess rushing for 297 yards against Ohio State will do that for you, and maybe he can pull that one out, and that will be great for them, because as we know, there's not a lot of trophies around the facility. So maybe that would be one more. Just looking at some comments here, seeing if there's anything we can talk about.
Josh Stevenson says, give Hafley whatever he wants. Get emoji of the $ bag and bring him back. Jeff Hafley just signed like a 5-year extension, I think, today. So Jeff Hafley's going to be the head coach of Boston College for the foreseeable future. So you can cross that one off the list. Cody Allen says, congratulations on Scherzer to the Mets, Tom. Big get. I mean, again, this is not my personal get, but I am delighted to see. All it takes is me completely throwing up my hands and giving up on the team, which I did probably about Wednesday last week after their owner threw a big public temper tantrum after Steven Matz signed somewhere else. And it was just like, literally, all you have to do is shut your mouth and open your checkbook. You are not there for anyone to listen to you. Write the frickin' checks, sign the players, shut up, pay the people, get out of the way. And guess what he did? That was it. It was like, oh, well, that was easy. All right, well, now he just spent like $250 million in the last like 4 days. Like, oh, cool.
They haven't had the press conference yet. Give them time.
Yeah,
Give them time.
yeah. Well, but yeah. So that was my big excitement today.
This comment from Eric D. Ohio State is done. These guys want to shame these coaches into shutting up. Ohio State talks smack all offseason. I don't know what smack people are talking about, and I still don't understand what smack is that Jim Harbaugh is referencing, aside from it getting out that Ryan Day told his team he wants to hang 100 on these guys. Oh gosh, a coach told his team that he wants to beat somebody. That's also true. Does that mean it's not something that has come back to haunt him? No. But like, what other trash is there other than they say like, we take the Michigan game seriously, where we take the team up north seriously, we take the rivalry seriously. They talk about the rivalry and what it means. I don't know where the trash talk is. I know there was some stomping on a Michigan flag or a jersey or something a couple days before the game, but that's not Ohio State talk smack all off season. So if I'm missing it, let me know. What trash, what smack are we talking about? Or is it just Michigan, Ohio State players saying, yes, we take the rivalry seriously, and others take that as trash talk because stop talking about it already. And it's like, no, I don't think Michigan's going to stop talking about it, and nor should they. And maybe that will help them win some more if they talk about it and take it more seriously. And I think they are, now that they've gotten that first taste of a win. Another thing that I want to just touch base on, if any Michigan fans are listening and are the same Michigan fans asking me where Michigan Monday is this week, I don't normally do one after the game, after the Ohio State game, because there's no point. It's about leading up to the game and what to look for and stuff like that. Although with all of this Gattis stuff and the Jim Harbaugh stuff, I feel like I'm going to have to write something at some point this week about Michigan and Ohio State and all of that, and some thoughts there, because I think we all certainly have some thoughts that we can throw out there. And who knows what's going to be coming in the next day or two as well.
Yeah, and we dropped an episode of Buckeye Weekly on Monday, which was sort of a quasi Michigan Monday sort of review of the game, and touched on some of this stuff as well. So, we did a quasi Michigan Monday podcast already today, so you can find that in the Buckeye Weekly feed wherever you get your fine podcasts. There was an interesting question from Jolly Man. What about the recruits switching to OSU from Notre Dame? So basically, hey, Brian Kelly's gone. Can Ohio State poach some recruits back? And I literally 5 minutes before the Brian Kelly news broke, posted an episode, tomorrow morning's episode of the Morning Scoop, with myself talking to Mark Givler about the Lincoln Riley recruiting fallout. So you can hear that episode. That Morning Scoop episode is already up. That's on YouTube, and it's in your podcast feeds already. The post will be on the front page of Buckeye Scoop at 5 a.m. tomorrow. So you get a thought, our thoughts on some of those. There are a few guys who, Ohio State and Notre Dame have been going head-to-head on a lot of kids recently, and it feels like the Buckeyes have done pretty well. Brennan Vernon, defensive end from Mentor, he committed to Notre Dame. He's a 2023, I believe.
Yes.
So there's some time, and let's see who Notre Dame hires. I don't know. I think a lot of times when people are committing to Notre Dame, they're committing to Notre Dame and not necessarily to the coach. So it may not be quite as easy to poach them from Notre Dame as it is to poach someone out of Oklahoma.
One of the names that jumps off the list right now, people are going to say Emil Wagner out of Huber Heights, Wayne, who committed to Notre Dame. Ohio State didn't finish second for him. Ohio State, I don't think, put in as much work as some of the other programs did, and Notre Dame landed him. And if he doesn't go to Notre Dame, I don't think he ends up at Ohio State. But you look at the top of the class, C.J. Williams, he's out of Mater Dei in Santa Ana. I think Lincoln Riley's going to be on the phone with him. Jalen Snead is a position to need a linebacker out of Hilton Head, South Carolina. But Ohio State didn't really push there either. There's not a lot of guys sitting in the 22 class right now that I would sit there and say that Ohio State and Notre Dame really were head-to-head all the way through the process. Jaden Bellamy, a defensive back out of New Jersey, but I think if Ohio State wanted Bellamy, Ohio State could have landed Bellamy. I don't think Ohio State pushed all the way. So you brought up the right name there, Tom, with Brennan Vernon. I think that's the one to kind of look at there. But if they bring in Luke Fickell, or, I heard you guys talking as I was getting on. I mean, I read a story from Pete Sampson from The Athletic, who said that Marcus Freeman could be considered for the job as well as the head coaching job, which would be a huge leap up for Marcus Freeman. But I think, if you get Freeman or you get Fickell there, I don't think we see a lot of defections in that class.
Yeah, I'm with you, Tom, and I tweeted this out about Notre Dame is just a little bit different than everywhere else, where players commit to Notre Dame more so than the coach. And so does that mean those guys will stay? No, but I think they tend to stay more than leave at that point. But because Brendan Vernon and his parents, I think Notre Dame was always something they were interested in. It was interesting to see Lorenzo Styles Jr. tweet out today something like a shake my head, and that was then quote tweeted by his brother Sonny Styles, saying that both Styles were going to come to Ohio State or something to that effect. That tweet was eventually deleted, probably after a text from Sonny saying, "Hey man, come on, help me out here. Just go ahead and delete that." So that's something to keep an eye on. Ohio State went after Lorenzo Styles as a defensive back. He wanted to play receiver. Ohio State's going to lose a couple of receivers. Who knows? Maybe he looks that way. But I also think Notre Dame is going to get a heck of a coach who is going to be personable, certainly more personable than their current coach, or former current head coach, based on my own vision of him, and which is basically a television only experience with him. But I think Matt Campbell, Luke Fickell, Marcus Freeman, all three of those guys I think those three guys can keep anybody that wants to be a Notre Dame kid. They probably have a pretty good chance of keeping them there, but I'm sure Ohio State will certainly try for Brennan Vernon as they want to build up that defensive line as much as they can, because we saw what happened this past week without enough defensive line or the right defensive line talent. Super chat from King Bronco, I think. I was looking to see if there are any others. Oh boy, yeah, I think we already read that one.
I was going to say, and sometimes I paraphrase too. If it's something that's crazy,
well, King Bronco is doing his thing where he just types out random words, and I'm not sure if we already read that one or if that was a new one. Let's go to a super chat from Rick Reese. I stepped out for a bit. What is S-talking? S-talking is crap talking. I assume, is that correct, Kevin?
Sure as S, it's correct.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. So that is that. Looking through here.
Doug Rockhold says Oklahoma's going with Brent Venables, and that is certainly the rumor tonight, that they are going to hire Clemson defensive coordinator Brent Venables. He was a former defensive coordinator at Oklahoma back in the day. I mean, that's I'm
underwhelmed.
That's a minus higher.
That's another one that you always kind of hear like, yeah, there might be some off-field stuff there that might, that why has he not had a head coaching job before? You kind of hear some stuff every once in a while. We'll see where he ends up, and if he does end up getting that job. It feels like you should be able to get a more sure thing at Oklahoma going into the SEC. Like I don't know that that's one that I really does that much for me.
I mean, Bob Stoops was an assistant when he was hired.
Mm-hmm.
Lincoln Riley was. I don't know about John Blake. I don't think you can use John Blake as any kind of proof of you should do this or that. So, I mean, they do have a good recent history, almost a quarter century of history of hiring an assistant for the job. I just, interacting with them a couple of times, I think I enjoyed it. I enjoyed talking to him. He's a very energetic guy. But when you've been an assistant, when you've been a coordinator for so long, you start to forget about that guy, because you're like, well, he should have already had a job by now. And if you don't, what's wrong? It's a lot like the NBA, or college basketball. Like if you're a 5th-year senior, like the NBA is like, what happened? We're not even going to mess with you because you should have been here 3 years ago. Like that, you're not good enough, and you're already too old for us to even invest anything in you anyway. So and he's got, as you said, I think he said that he was the coordinator there for Bob Stoops, and so there's some history there. But it just feels like to me like he should have already been somewhere. And if you're not, then I kind of feel underwhelmed by it. But again, 3 years ago, this probably would have been, oh, that's a really good hire. So I don't know what has necessarily changed since then, other than you should have been somewhere by now, and that's probably my own hang up.
He should have been somewhere by now. Ohio State completely blew out that defense last year.
Yes.
There's a lot of stank on Clemson right now based on the year that they've had, and I understand that they kind of fixed some things along the way, but I don't think that anybody's star is as bright in the sky right now based on that. I mean, Tony Elliott, the OC, is somebody that's been mentioned for jobs. I don't know how bright his star is right now. You hit the nail on the head. Oklahoma should be able to go out and get a more definitive hire, and I don't know if Venables is the guy. I just think it's kind of a meh legacy type of hire, which doesn't always work out. I mean, more often than not, doesn't work out.
Well, Kevin, I think you hit it for me. You reminded me of why I don't like this hire even more. It's because Ohio State shielded their offensive calls, and he was almost powerless. Like, so they basically stopped it from stealing signals, stopped staff from stealing signals, and you see the man behind the curtain or whatever. And I think that was probably the main thing for me, other than just why aren't you a head coach yet? And yeah, boy, the Tony Elliott, that offense, he probably should have gotten out while he had a chance, and now we'll see what happens with him in terms of at this point, you've got to continue to stay hoping for something better to open up or something good, or maybe you're just gonna have to become a half-lifer like Venables.
Mm-hmm.
We had a super chat in there somewhere.
Yeah, I'm scrolling
from Matthew Witham.
Go ahead.
Saying thank you, Matthew. Thank you guys all for jumping on with us. An unplanned but absolutely necessary emergency stream, and we may start doing more of these when crazy stuff just randomly happens. One here from Lanny Seals. Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to be the best receiver in the nation next year. I am not going to argue with that one. If anybody else would like to argue with that one, please do so now.
No, I mean, I think you've got a real possibility because you assume that Wilson goes pro. You assume that Olave goes pro. I think it would be a major shock if either of those guys are back. He goes back outside. You've got Emeka Egbuka, who's probably in the slot, and then you've got.
I think you can keep him inside and throw him the ball 100 times.
Yeah, and I mean, you could certainly keep him inside and have Julian Fleming and Marvin Harrison outside if you want to have Egbuka as the fourth guy, or have kick him outside and have Egbuka in the slot, and then Marvin Harrison and Julian Fleming, either one of them on the other side outside. It may kind of depend on where which of those three, which of those four guys are the best three, and they have the option to move these guys around. They've done that in the past where Garrett Wilson went outside, inside, outside 3 years in a row. They may do the same thing at some point with in the coming year. And one of the things that I think is really interesting to me about whatever this Ohio State bowl game ends up being is, there's a decent possibility. We talked about this, after the game, I think on Saturday. There's a decent possibility you've seen the last of Chris Olave and or Garrett Wilson. If they don't play in the bowl game, well, now you're going to get to see the younger guys. So, yes, it's the Rose Bowl or whatever it is, but it's also kind of the spring game because you're kind of getting a sense of, okay, we keep hearing about Julian Fleming, we keep hearing about Marvin Harrison, we keep hearing about Emeka Egbuka. Now let's see them, because you really have not, you've seen glimpses of all of them at some point this season, and they've all looked intriguing at times. But now let's see, next year starts now, basically. Like, the bowl practice starts starts next season. The then you're going through winter workouts and spring ball, but you're already, if some of these guys are already leaving, you're already starting to work towards next season. And that's kind of intriguing to me. And the other thing that's kind of intriguing to me is, you just got called soft, and you're probably going to have to play either or. If you go to the Rose Bowl, if Michigan wins this weekend, then Ohio State likely goes to the Rose Bowl. If they go to the Rose Bowl, they're playing the Pac-12 champion, which is either going to be Utah or Oregon, which is going to be, well, if you're soft, this isn't going to be a good matchup for you. So I guess we'll find out how Ohio State responds to getting called soft pretty quickly.
Kevin, I want you to address this one from Bradley Shaw. Per ESPN, Harbaugh to give all bonuses to COVID-affected staff. What a blank hole. Kevin, can you believe the gall of this Jim Harbaugh guy to give money to staff who had to have be furloughed or give money back or a percentage of their checks? Where does this guy get off?
You can be well-intentioned and an a-hole, and he's both. He's an a-hole. I mean, plain and simple, he's an a-hole. But so are most head coaches, if we're being completely honest. When it's your a-hole, you're not as concerned about it because it's your a-hole. But, congratulations. I think that's a very nice gesture by him. Jim Harbaugh's a lot of things. Weird, shirtless guy at camp are two things that come to mind. But, I think this is a really nice thing that he's doing there to do that. But it doesn't make him any less of an a-hole. And I know we've got a lot of Michigan people in the chat, and whatever, I'll wear it, I'll own it. But, he's an a-hole.
Treasure the Torah, one of our good friends here. When I look at Ohio State now, they're more of a finesse type of team by definition, intricate, refined, delicate. And I think we talked about this a little bit on either yesterday's show or the post game, where when part of your running game is either RPOs, which end up throwing the ball, or it's wide screens out to the receivers, and you're not necessarily, the offensive line isn't mauling on the RPOs per se, and they're not certainly mauling on something that is thrown 15, 20 yards away from them. Do they end up getting soft over the course of a season because they are not asked to be maulers and mashers more than 30 times a game instead of the 60 times a game that other programs ask their offensive line? So somebody was labeled finesse. Oh, like Larry Johnson labeled Jack Sawyer finesse compared to JT Tuimoloau a couple of months ago, and it was like people are going to run with that, and that's not what you ever want to hear about a football player. Certainly not a defensive end, and certainly not a defense as a whole, or even an offense in this case. I think you can be aggressive and physical as a passing team. I think, though, Tom, I think it's harder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is, and that was that's kind of always been the Big 12. The knock on the Big 12 teams is you're going against the defenses that play in the air raid in practice every day. Like you're not dealing with the the tough physical running attack, and that's one of the things that Michigan kind of did. The reason what Michigan did this year has kind of worked is because it's kind of a counterpunch. The whole sport is going one way, and Michigan's kind of going the other way, where you go. Everyone is sort of going, spread them out, switch to a 4-2-5 kind of defense, and Michigan's going, no, hard physical interior running, and you're building your defense to stop one thing, and they're going completely the other way. And Wisconsin has kind of been doing that for years, and you can structure your defense to stop that, but Ohio State was still running 4-2-5 on Saturday, which was, I can't wait to have Ross Fulton on the show on the Morning Scoop later on the week to get his thoughts on why they were doing that, because and part of it may just be they were like running out of healthy linebackers at that point. They had guys who had a lot. They had two guys who transferred in the middle of the season. They were not super deep to begin the year. two guys who transferred in the middle of the season, and then you had other guys who were hurt, and then you had guys who were sick, and so you were running out of healthy linebackers. So that's part of
You
the
were playing
issue.
Cade Stover. You were playing Cade Stover at linebacker.
Yeah. You had a guy who literally has been a tight end all year who's moving to linebacker. I mean, there was a guy who was a long snapper who played linebacker in the spring game this year because it was. I mean, like they have had depth issues there all year. You're bringing in some good talent. C.J. Hicks is coming in this year, 5-star prospect, top 10 player nationally. You know, Gabe Powers is potentially coming in at linebacker, if not at defensive end. But you know, they were not eligible on Saturday, so you were sort of limited in your options there.
I think Gabe Powers has to stay at linebacker until he outgrows it, or at least until the roster allows for him to move. That takes us to this question from Adam Baker that I'll throw to you, Kevin. Please tell us the 4-2-5 is gone next year with Notre Dame, Wisconsin, Iowa, plus Michigan State, and Michigan on the schedule. I think it's a great point about the style of offenses that Ohio State is going to play, because generally they might play two of these offenses in a year. So you want the defense to be more built towards the most the offense you're going to face more often, which wouldn't be these. But I think it'll come down to who is a defensive coordinator, and then you got to let him do what he does.
If you have more than two healthy linebackers, then you can maybe play a 4-3. I'm not convinced Ohio State in the Michigan game. Everybody talked about them having 6 in the box. Ohio State was very thin at linebacker, as Tom had said. They didn't have any healthy bodies. So, if the question was, please tell me that they're not going to play the 4-2-5. All right, they're not going to play the 4-2-5, but I don't know that specifically. But with the changes that should be expected coming on the defense, I don't think that's going to be their base. I don't think that they can run that as the base. But you've got to have the Jimmies and Joes to be able to execute the plan. You can sit there and drop whatever you want to in the dirt, but if you don't have guys who can fill the roles, then you're in trouble. But I think Ohio State's going to hit the transfer portal. I think that they're going to get at least one linebacker out of the portal, if not more. I certainly don't know names. We've seen some names go in today. Today was a busy day for the portal, but I think that's going to go on for coming days and weeks at this point. So you kind of figure that out. Whether or not, whoever they bring in, if they bring in a new DC, if they're a 3-4 guy, then you're going to see that. If they're a 4-3 guy, you're going to see that. But I don't think based on the schedule that you can see them running such a light front with a 4-2-5 unless they really find some ways to scheme things up. But this was also a team this season that we saw change from single high to 2 safeties, moving away from cover 1, cover 3 exclusively to a much more multiple set. So with the benefit of an off season, I mean, anything's possible. But if you go to 3-4, you have to change the dudes you're recruiting. They're not built right now to be able to make an easy switch over to a 3-4. They don't have – how many 0s and 1 techs do they have on this roster right now? They don't have that giant nose tackle. They've not had a space eater like that for a while.
I mean,
and that's not what Larry Johnson does either. So,
Larry Johnson very much does not want to play a 3-4. He is a 4-3 guy. And, if you bring in a 3-4 defensive coordinator, that probably is Larry Johnson may be, ready to hang it up at that point. If I told you that Brian Kelly sent his team a breakup text tonight, would you be interested in hearing the text of it? Because I know I was.
I would, Tom.
It's not you, it's me.
Our old buddy Stephen Means from Cleveland.com tweeted something that basically was like, LOL, Brian Kelly just broke up with him by text. And so then I had to go find it. Here it is. Men, let me first apologize for the late night text, and more importantly for not being able to share the news with you in person that I will be leaving Notre Dame. I'm flying back to South Bend tonight to be able to meet with you in the morning, but the news broke late today, and I'm sorry you found out through social media or news reports. I'll have more to share when we meet tomorrow at 7 a.m., but for now, just know that my love for you is limitless, and I'm so proud of all that you have accomplished. Our program is elite because of your hard work and commitment, and I know that will continue. I will share more in the morning when we meet. Again, my sincere apologies for not being able to coach, or not being able to be the one to share the news with you directly, Coach Kelly. At least he's meeting with him in person. That's, I don't feel like that meeting ever goes great, and from all indications at Oklahoma, that meeting did not go great when Lincoln Riley was having that meeting. But, and at least coming back and meeting with him in person, like that's there's not a great way to do this, but that is the least bad way to do that. Like I always remember Todd Graham basically. Todd Graham was famous for, I think, maybe texting or just straight up ghosting. Who was the coordinator for Alabama? Who was the coordinator for Alabama? Who just Dan Enos a couple of years ago,
Yep.
just straight up, like, he left to go be the coordinator at Miami, I think, and literally just the Nick Saban shows up for a staff meeting. Dan Enos isn't there. He's like, "Where's Dan?" They go into Dan Enos' office, and it's like the chair is still spinning and everything else is gone. And he has just like straight up ghosted the program. Like, that's the way not to do it. So, I mean, that was not nearly as amusing as I thought it was going to be. So kudos to Brian Kelly for at least trying to do it the right way.
Well, there's something special out there for you. It's just not me. Get lost.
I will credit Brian Kelly for that. Although it's pretty much the exact same wording that Lene Kakua had when she broke up with Manti Te'o, but at least Brian Kelly eventually met with his players in person, unlike Lene Kakua. I don't want to go there. Don't want to get into that right now, but she could have done it in person. Back to the 4-5. Keep it, well,
you may not have heard the punchline of that story.
And would it even surprise you if something like that also happened tonight? Because it would not surprise me at all. That was an amazing thing. The 4-5, though, keep in mind, Ohio State does have a SAM for that as well. They just didn't have any for Michigan. Like, they have a built-in. They can go to a 4-3. They can even go to a 4-4. They just lost so many guys so quickly, and that they didn't have the 3 or the 4. And Taraja Mitchell is an inside guy, so I don't think they were comfortable playing him. And I don't even know if he was going to. I don't even know if he played against Michigan. And so they can go 4-5, but they will have plans for a 4-3 and a 4-4 depending on the style of offense. I don't think they would continue to just put 6 in the box and let's just see if it helps here, and let's just see if it works this time, because I don't think it would. I saw some people asking, will NIL keep Garrett Wilson in Columbus? I really don't think so. I know I am biased, but he is wide receiver 1 to me. And he may run like a 4.58 or something like that, and he's going to measure in at like 6'125" and 192 pounds, and everybody's going to look at him like, what is special about him? And then they go and watch the tape, and they're like, oh yeah, that's right. He can do all of that and makes catches like nobody else. Tom, you got something to say, it looks like?
Yes, I was just scrolling through Matt Fortuna's timeline because he was the one who had the quote, the screenshot of the whole Brian Kelly text. Here's something from Matt Fortuna a little earlier this evening. I'm just going to read the full tweet. This is usually how these things go, but Brian Kelly has ghosted everyone at Notre Dame. Just spoke to one assistant who saw reports on his phone tonight as he was exiting a recruit's home. Quote, the news broke when I walked out of the house, so I look like an effing a-hole. Now that's a quote right there. That is a quote.
I just imagine that situation, trying to talk to the parents and the recruit, and you're all just standing on the porch shaking your head, and you're like, I don't know, but are you ready to commit to Notre Dame?
Speaking of,
why do you do the visit? Why do you do the visit if you know this is happening the day after? I mean, that's just. Well, it just seems really tone deaf at that point. I mean, I know if you cancel, it raises red flags and you don't want to out yourself, but at least it's not as bad as the rumors of what happened with Tommy Tuberville about being at a dinner and everything.
I was just about to transition there because that's my favorite all-time story. Tommy Tuberville was out. He was the coach at Texas Tech. He was out at dinner with recruits and maybe some assistants, and got up to go to the bathroom and never came back. And it was then the next day he was introduced as the head coach of the University of Cincinnati. College football, there's nothing like it.
That's like, did he forget his wallet? Like, why did he leave? Like, look, we've all dined and dashed. We've all done it. Okay, nobody here is innocent. But just to make, how long are you waiting there? Like, somebody go check on him? Do you get the manager at that point? Like, are you checking each stall in the bathroom? You know, if they're closed, that's certainly an all timer, and it just tells you exactly the kind of guy he is. That's the type of human being he is to be able to do that. Anything we are seeing in the chat here that we want to address? It looks like there's a lot of Michigan talk going on for some reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man.
Um,
I think the comments of YouTube are going to be an active place for the next year or so as folks go to war with each other.
Yes, you see some John Cooper reminiscing. Yes. Yes, it's off the rails when it's when John Cooper is being mentioned. Super chat from TB Lightning Bolt. Sorry if we've missed some. The comments are going a little crazy right now. Bigger disappointment on D, Zach Harrison or Teron Vincent? That's a good question. And to label them disappointments, I guess maybe who didn't meet expectations would be a better way to say that. Teron Vincent started in front of Haskell Garrett for much of the season when he was healthy. Zach Harrison was always in the lineup when he was healthy. He was starting, I mean. So, but neither of them produced like we thought they would, like they were expected to. And you expect more from a defensive end in terms of stats than a defensive tackle. So a defensive tackle not blowing up is not a huge thing. But you could go games and wonder, did Teron Vincent play? Like if you're only paying attention to the offensive side of the line of scrimmage, you could go games without knowing if he actually played.
And we need to wrap up pretty soon because I just realized I never plugged my laptop in and I'm down to 6% on my battery. So,
and you're the producer.
Kevin.
Yeah, well,
Yes.
look at me. I'm pulling a Kevin Noon post game. Look at me. I'm officially a producer now. Hooray! So anyway, thanks for Kevin. So thanks for joining us, everyone. If you like the show, we post this as the Buckeye Weekly podcast. If you like podcasts, we did a Michigan Monday show, Michigan Monday adjacent show on Monday, so that is available in podcast feeds. This will be up as our Tuesday show. So, all right, Tony, send us out.
Take us home. All right, we will go ahead and cap it there. We did give you like an hour and 12 minutes, so I want to thank you all for tuning in just randomly on a Monday night. We do appreciate it. Make sure to hit that subscription bell, and you'll be notified next time we do something like this or next time we drop anything. So that will do it for us. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you guys later.